from another planet? Now, if you've never seen any of my videos before, I'm not really from another planet. I'm from Mill Hill, which is, if you don't know, North London. I was from Mill Hill, well, that's where I grew up. They're my parents. Did quite well for themselves, right? Making salt beef sandwiches, corned beef sandwiches. If you're in America, if you went to Wembley in the mid 80s to the mid 90s, and you had a corned beef sandwich, a salt beef sandwich, that was made by my parents. A lot of them actually were cooked by my own fair self. So so I'm not from another planet. And now I live in Israel, in Yehuda and Samaria. So if you get a map of Israel, you put a pin right in the middle. That's me. That's essentially where I live. Now, this is a message for all Jews, for every Jew, regardless of size or shape or type of Jew. You could be a super frummy Jew with a black hat and a strimal in the shower, right? Like just super duper frummy. You could be, modern Orthodox. You could be not religious at all. You could be anti-religious. You could be a normie, right? Normies are people who they'll go to a Seder on Passover, on Pesach, and they'll do some traditional Jewy stuff. But generally speaking, and they're not opposed to it. Again, what the vast majority is. But they'll be you don't keep the ancient laws of Sabbath in an Orthodox fashion, right? Ritualistic, right? Less ritualistically observant. That's the best way of describing, because I'm of the opinion ritualistic Judaism, where I think it's very good, used as a means to an end to connect to God. Because I'm super frummy. I'm not super frummy. I'm mashugana frummy, right? I'm so frummy, I freak out the frummies, right? That you have like most standard frummies. They go to synagogue 3 times a day, and they do it. They do all the ritualistic Judaism. That is no barometer whatsoever on if you're a good or a bad person. Sadly enough, right? It's absolutely not whatsoever. But yeah, this is a message to all this, because we're going to be talking about October 7th. And October 7th was something that I think very viscerally affected all Jews, like regardless of what type of Jew you were, right? It's something that, like, I think really was a boot in the gut to every single one of us, right? Without exception at all. So I'm going to want to look at it from our national cultural written heritage, right? We've got a 3,000 year written history, written wisdom, right? So I'm going to put it through the mainstream approach to that. I'm not trying to proselytize you in any way, shape, or form. I genuinely, you do you, right? You do you, and God bless you for that, right? It's a good thing to do you, right? I think it's something that we should all shoot for in life, and I just don't think we do that much. But you do you. So there are 3 questions I have found. As through my life, I've been. I was brought up. I wasn't religious when I was brought up, until about the age of 20. Then I had an open ticket to Israel in the 90s, and I ended up going to Aish Torah. It's a yeshiva that tries to suck in unsuspecting non-religious people and make them religious, and boy, it worked with me. So then I was super duper black hat religious. I was lived in that world for a good 10-15 years, maybe longer, right? And now I live in a more modern Orthodox community. People wear normal clothes and they go to synagogue, and so I think I've been in most of the to get an idea of what that world is like. I've lived in most of the worlds of Judaism, most of them, in broad strokes, right? Also, I really want to talk about October 7th for several reasons. Firstly, I think I predicted it. Now, did I predict it? I don't know. I'm going to tell you what happened. You decide. I have no idea. It's very freaky if you do think that, right? I think I predicted it, and also we are, I think, have an incredible opportunity in front of us right now, right? This point in space and time. It's we're coming up to Rosh Hashanah this week, which again, the mainstream cultural understanding of that is a rebooting of reality, right? Reality gets to be renewed, and we have a lot of control over the shape of what that reality will be for the next year, if we care to do that, right? If we care to, and again, if you don't have to believe a word I'm saying, right? Because basically the place I'm going to is somewhere I think every sane person could really get behind. So as I said, there's three questions I found in the religious world that is verboten, absolutely verboten to ask. The first question, especially on current events. So I was saying we have an opportunity right now. So first we have Rosh Hashanah come out. Secondly, we have seen just an incredible success that our military has had over the last week, 2 weeks against Hezbollah. If you're looking at the world, if you're looking at the world now as opposed to the world of October 7th, and you do believe in God or an infinite being or whatever, right? It would seem like he was gave success to Hamas on October 7th, and he seems to be giving success to us now. And I think we can infer from that we have an opportunity, right? We have an opportunity, in front of us. That's what I'm going to talk about in more detail. So anyway, I said there's three questions that religious Jews hate you asking, right? It's verboten. The first question is, why do you think God did that? Especially on current events. Like, why do you think God did? They freak out if you ask that. Like, I remember several years ago, there was terrible tragedy in Tzvat for this. There's a holiday called Lag BaOmer, a weird holiday, right? That is a weird holiday. It's it wasn't that big, like in the 90s when I was getting religious. It wasn't that. It was like you have a bonfire, maybe some hot dogs, and that was it. Now it's huge, right? You have thousands. I would say literally thousands of buses packed full with like super duper religious Jews going to Tzvat on the to commemorate the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So who was a huge spiritual giant in our history. He wrote the book called the Zohar, which is essentially the cornerstone of Jewish mysticism. And again, it's a weird holiday because you go there and it's a one-day thing. And first, when you get there, it's like this weird festival vibe. Like it really is. It's like festival vibe with lots and lots of super Jewy Jews, right? It's very strange. But as you get inside it, you get to the tomb of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, also known as Rabbi. You get into it's very intense. Like there's this intense prayer going on. There's also he has a mikveh, right? I think City of Tzvat has a mikveh, which is supposed to be extremely cold. I've never been in it, not for me, baby. So, but yeah, it's this really spiritually intense time, right? And it's a very joyous holiday. It's at the beginning of summer. And again, a few years ago, this terrible tragedy happened. It was awful. It was was it Hillsborough? Was that the football stadium in England that's happened in? People were going in, right, and they kept going in, and it ended up being a huge crush, and I think 40 or 45 people were killed, right? And it was just shocking, right? Shocking. Why? Because it was. If there is a God, he was sending a message that way, but directly to the frum Jews, the religious Jews, because this was a very uniquely religious Jewish holiday. And I think it was a warning for October 7th. So let's just take a little step back for a second and talk about the general worldview. How can two completely separate, disparate events be tied together in any way in this, from this worldview? And essentially like this, what is God? What is the Jewish conception of God? Well, God is infinite. The most central Jewish prayer is Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. God is one. What does that one mean? That's infinite. It means that there is only God. Their finite brains can't really cope with it. So God it could be described as a need, I don't know, to give, right? To give. But who'd you give to? There's only him. So God creates a bubble inside himself, and metaphorically, to allow space and time, right, and to allow us to exist. That's what's our reality is. Honestly, on a practical level, the best explanation I ever heard is from Star Wars, 1977. Yeah, it surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the universe together, right? That is a Jewish conception of God. However, God, we also think it's a thinking, feeling entity that loves you, right? That loves you, what's the best for you in every situation, which normally means like giving you like awful things you have to go through, right, to make you into a better person. Yeah, not fun. But that's the essential view of God, and the view of reality is that this bubble we live in, it's a construct. It's real, but not as real as we think it is, and it can be. You can what's the word? Like pop the hood on reality and hotwire it to a certain extent. So. I think again the best example of that I think would be the Matrix, right? Which is we lived in this fake reality. Everyone was in their pods, but so that's essentially it. So that's how two disparate things could be connected because it's all God, right? It's all God. Like oftentimes I will be I've talked to God, right, and I have again. Meshuggah Nefrum, okay, it's fine. I'm completely happy with who I am. But I mean, he doesn't talk back, but he kind of does. That's the weird thing. Like oftentimes, just from the happenstance of life, right? You'll have somebody say something to you which answers the question that's in your head. Are you reading into it? Maybe, right? Maybe, I don't know. But that's kind of like the worldview. So at the time when this terrible tragedy happened, I said, this is a warning. It's a warning because something a lot worse is going to happen, right? And sadly, again, was I proved right? Yes. But was it dumb luck or was it, was I onto something? I don't know, right? I don't know. But the question you're not allowed to ask is, why God do that, right? Why God do that? And the reason you're not allowed to ask that question is because we all know the answer, or at least we know the answer isn't because God is super duper happy with us. Oh, yeah. Oh, he's so happy with us. He just brought this terrible tragedy, right? So, that became a much bigger taboo to do around October 7th. And really, I haven't really seen any rabbinic leadership do. I mean, not saying there hasn't been. I haven't personally. October 7th. What? Why would a loving God do that? And I'm sure most of us watching have some kind of idea of the depths of the atrocities that went on that day, right? It's absolutely it's beyond shocking. It's horrifying, and the more you look, and I'm the type of person who can't not look, right? The more you look, the more horrifying it is. So why would God do that? So I want to dissect October 7th for a little bit and say, what was it, right? On a theological perspective, what was October 7th? And it seems to me it was an expression of what we call gullet, right? Gullus, depends on your tradition. So, we a couple of thousand years ago, just under, we experienced an exile from Israel, right? Our entire society was destroyed and we were sent, in exile. We basically went in two different directions at once. We had the Ashkenazi Jews went this way, the Sephardi Jews went that way, Ethiopian Jews over there, and we've been living in exile ever since. So, but what is? I mean, even though since 48 we've been coming back here, like there's been a real resurgence of life in Israel, which is really weird because on the day that we really mourn this exile. You have all these Putin that you say, oh God, that's awful, right? It's a key that they are awful. They're written in this super duper complicated Hebrew. It's very lyrical, right? It's very beautiful, but I have no idea what's lying. And it's all like talking about the exile and how life in Israel was completely destroyed. And you look out your window, you're building freaking everywhere, right? This life is super duper back here, right? So it's a bit what's it? Discombobulating, right? So, exile means more than that, right? We are mourning more than just the expulsion from this land, which again we we live in incredible times that we're able to live here again. First time in like a couple of thousand years, right? It's mind blowing, right? Again, the more you think about it, it is absolutely mind blowing. So, but Gallus is much more than that, right? Because Gallus is. Well, there's several different ones. That book, the Zohar, I mentioned just now, talks about it. There's a commentary on the Old Testament, on the first verse in the Old Testament, and it talks about the different types of exiles there are. I think there's 4, but don't quote me on that. I haven't looked at it in several years. And each different exile has a different flavor to it, right? Has a different character to it. And what happened on October 7th was the exile we're currently living. It was the definition of it, right? It was more than the definition of it. Everything connected to this exile happened in that time, right? It was, when we mourn the exile, we're not just mourning the expulsion from the land. We're mourning every pogrom, every concentration camp, every a gas chamber, every beating, right? Every expulsion, every bit of anti-Semitism from that day to this. That's what we're mourning when we talk about exile. And again, that's what October 7th was. I think it hit us on almost a cultural race memory, and I think that's why we all found it so horrifying. We all thought, well, we're beyond that now, right? We have an army, we have a country, we can defend ourselves, right? And I think God yanked the carpet out from under our feet and said, no, you don't get nothing without my say so. So why would God do that, right? Why would God do that? It's crazy. So when we look at the reasons why we live in this state called Galus, why we live in this state called exile, they teach kindergarten kids this at school, right? It's because we were not nice to each other, essentially. We didn't really care about each other. We would defame one another, which we do a lot today, right? We talk badly about one another. We lie about one another. The archetypal case of what caused this exile was the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. Essentially, the wrong person invited them to a party, right? And he gets thrown out. He begs not to be thrown out, not to be embarrassed, and he's thrown out anyway. And that, in story terms, that leads him to go and report to the Romans that did the exile and stir things up there. But on a theological level, right? I think God looked at us and go, we are so far from what I wanted you to be, what I gave you this land to be, the people I want you to be, because you can do this stuff. And again, I don't think it was the actions of several individuals. I think it was everybody else watching that just said, not doing me. Not my problem, right? Not my problem. That's just simply not the way God wants us to live. And we have a tradition that any generation that doesn't see the rebuilding of a temple, which is when this galus, this exile ends, and the beginning of our services, which is essentially you went to the temple in Jerusalem and you had an awesome steak, right? That that's better than prayer. We can pray as well, right? But that's what it like. And also we had like a much greater presence of God in the world, right? Which I think we can all agree, not so much nowadays, right? Not so much nowadays. So I know with complete crystalline certainty, right? This is something that we as a people do not do, right? There may be pockets of people who do it. And I'll tell you exactly why I know. Like 100% clear. It's not an opinion, right? I had this thing a few years ago. We had a rabbi in our town and he got himself into some trouble. There was a serious criminal investigation going on. And he inserted himself into it, and somewhat foolishly, but he inserted himself into it, and then he started to support one side of this criminal investigation. It had to be the side that has significantly financially benefited him, and he had close personal ties with. So I was like, well, that's not okay. I was like, well, that looks totally, completely corrupt. At the time, I didn't think he was, right? So I went to talk to him, and I talked to him for like 2 hours. Like it was, and just nothing would land. I was like, look, you're making us all look like criminals. You can't do this without a good reason in Jewish law, and he didn't have one, right? And tried the best. So that caused some problems. So I eventually said, look, I can't in any way, shape, or form support this. I think it's completely not kosher, completely trafe. And all hell broke loose like you wouldn't imagine. Oh my God, you would have thought I did October 7th on his family, right? All hell broke loose like you just could not believe. But what happened next is the thing that really genuinely disturbed me. Like when people get in trouble, they normally rely on negative behaviors that make them feel more comfortable. And this guy's negative behavior was very much talking badly about each other, right? This guy was a cry bully, right? A cry bully is somebody who like does all these, egregious things, right? And you react in any way. They go, oh no, I'm being attacked! Ah! And he lied, and he lied, and he lied from the pulpit, right? About neighbors of mine, about me. Lied and lied and lied and lied. Breathtaking, right? And it actually got worse as time went on. All right. It's but here's the thing. And the thing that really disturbed me, like everybody I knew essentially believed it to some extent, right? And I was like apoplectic. I'm like, the most central of our laws is that, and it really is the most central law. This is more Treif than Bacon, right? Most central laws is that we don't go in for lying, defamatory gossip. And look, I'll give you, you might not know that he was lying, right? But you certainly knew it was like malicious, defamatory gossip. And here's the thing. It wasn't on anybody's radar. Just in the same way comes a bar comes. So it wasn't on anybody's radar that you shouldn't humiliate a person for no bloody reason, right? Or for any reason, right? He's your brother. We are family, right? You should have, we call it chayin. How do you translate chayin? You should have affection and love for one another, right? That's what God wants, right? Essentially, from my understanding of what the traditional ones say, that's exactly what we're going. And this guy, we have all these laws because this thing called Smear Salashad, laws on speech. He like broke all of them. It's like unbelievable. He eventually ended up destroying his career when he wasn't getting his contract renewed because like just everybody was disgusted with him, apart from a little core of groupies he had around. Like really, and I think the tragedy of this is, this synagogue this town I moved to in middle of Israel. The reason we moved here is because it was an expression of what I thought God wanted. That synagogue had many different types of Jew, right? You had people who weren't religious, and people who were wearing black hats, and we all got down together. Everybody treated each other with respect. And I was like, this is exactly what God wanted, and it was just destroyed, right? It was, and it's still destroyed now. Like it's about every 3 months somebody comes up to me and says, "What happened to the shore? Like why does nobody come here anymore? Why there's no community anymore?" Right? It's because you blew it up, right? But anyway, here's the thing: this shouldn't be possible if we had it in any way, shape, or form on our radar that we shouldn't talk smack about each other, like that it was a bad thing to do. And again, when I say a bad thing to do, I want to put it in context. There is much more room in Jewish law to eat bacon than there is to do this. And honestly, if you're a free person watching this, I'm telling the truth, right? This is something that we don't do. Yeah, even, we are weak in many areas. And, I have to tell you, if you're a free person and you don't know people who aren't religious, they all think you're full of, crap to a certain extent. They do, right? They all think, you people don't live up to your ideals, and they're not wrong with that, are they? Right? And again, everybody knows this, right? But it's the thing. It's a taboo thing that you're not allowed to say. It got worse and worse. I mean, like, I'm trying to gloss over right now because it really destroyed my life. I nearly killed myself. I mean, I literally had a knife on my wrist. Yeah, and the incredible thing is when I tell people that, then it matters. Up until what? God telling you not to do that didn't, right? And so I don't think this is a problem confined to my little community. As I said, it was lovely before this guy arrived. It really was genuinely lovely. Right, I don't think there's a problem confined to my neck of the woods. I think this is something much more persuasive, right? That goes throughout all strata of Judaism. Why do I think that? October 7th, right? So the second question that you're not allowed to ask ever. This is worse than the first question. The second question that you're never allowed to ask is, what do you think God thinks about that? Right? None of you keep these central laws for which we live in exile, for which every gas chamber was built because we do not do these things. We do not care about one another. Every time a Jew is beaten, and now every time I have 2 kids, I've got 4 kids, but I've got two boys, right? They're both in combat, right? They're both in Gaza, and both of them, have bullets whizzing by their ears more often than not. And I really genuinely believe every time we talk smack about each other, another bullet whizzes past one of our children's ears, right? And I've been to too many funerals this year. Like if you know, it's horrific, right? It doesn't get any better. It is absolutely horrific. You know. So we the problem is we have our little brains, and we had our little brains back in as this exile was happening, right? Just before the exile happened, back 2,000 years. It's never going to happen. No, nothing like ever's going to happen. That's cray. That's crazy talk. And then it happened, right? So after all this thing happened with my synagogue, I thought, well, the only response could be a terrible punishment of anti-Semitic violence. And I actually said that to be like literally use those words. So did I predict? I know. I looked at somebody I used to be friendly with once, and I'm not so much anymore, right? Because I looked at him and I said, "Aren't you scared?" Right? Like, don't you think God's real? Here's the thing: if you don't think it's real, do you have any idea how much work Judaism is? Right? It's just there's so much stuff, and it's so expensive. If there's a central area of Judaism that you want to blow off kashrut. Oh my God, that makes so much more sense. Firstly, food is half the cost, and secondly, treif is awesome. Treif is delicious. Speaking of my nose, like there's not. I mean, honestly, I think bacon is probably the most delicious thing ever made. Right, closely followed by lobster. And fine, if you have somebody who was brought up religious, they look at it, they go, ah! They look at lobster, it looks like a giant cockroach to them. To me, I'm like, oh, I miss that. And I do. I mean, it's better in recent years. Now you've got that like fake meat. So you at least can have a cheeseburger. The fake meat's pretty darn good. But yeah, blow off kashrut, right? If we kept kashrut in the same way we kept this thing called Smear Salashin, if you go to a Kiddush, you sure you'll have a shrimp station, and it will be fine. It'll be awesome in my mind. Anyway. Yeah, but yet still, right? And again, this is like that's taught in kindergarten to our children, and it's something that we completely and totally ignore in every way, shape, or form. I mean, like, so it's people couldn't even conceive there was something wrong with the rabbi lying through his teeth from the pulpit to drag mine other people's names through the mud, right? And they couldn't conceive. Well, what would be wrong with that? It was amazing, right? It was absolutely amazing. So I said, look, the only response has to be a terrible response of anti-Semitic violence. Did I expect October 7th? No, not in any. And I'm not saying the entire October 7th was what happened in my little town, right? But I'm saying I think what happened in my little town was endemic across the entire Jewish world. Of like we just can't stop talking crap about each other, right? And for what, right? And for there's a thing. There's a tradition we have, right? What's it got? Fable. There's a fable. I don't know. Not a fable. It's like apocrypha. I can't. I'm trying to translate the word in my head. And I really can't. Where anyway, it says that at the end of days, everybody gets to see their inclination towards evil, right? And the evil people, they will just see a tiny hair, right? A tiny hair, and they'll go, "How did that tiny nothing completely subsume me?" Right? How? Like, what the hell? Like that nothing just took over my life completely. Right? It's and I believe I witnessed it. Although I'll give you a much better explanation of it. There's an episode of The Simpsons once where Homer gets his hand caught in a vending machine, right? And they're trying to get his out. Fireman are there, so they're trying to get his arm out. So the doctor's there saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. Simpson, we're going to need to amputate." And he's like, "Oh no!" And yeah, so they're about to do it. And said, "Wait a minute, Mr. Simpson, are you just holding on to the candy in the vending machine?" He said, "Yes." And that's really where we are. Right, we just hold on so tightly, so firmly to this absolute need to talk crap about each other and have no problem with it whatsoever, right? And have no problem with whatsoever. And that makes October the 7th much more understandable. Because what was October the 7th? It was also the holiday of Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeres. Now, what is that in tradition? It's you have Rosh Hashanah where God judges us. We have Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, judges us, seals us, writes in the book of life, whatever. Blah, blah, blah. But the judgment for that year is delivered on the morning of Simchat Torah, right? Which is exactly when the attacks happen, right? And again, I don't think that the attacks were directed at any people, any different people for different reasons, right? I think the attack was a message from God to us, right? And the message from God is be nice to each other, right? Just be nice to each other. It's I will quote Doctor Who, right? There's a lot of good quotes in Doctor Who. There's always try and be good, but never fail to be kind, right? And that's I think the message that we don't really understand, right? So as I said, I got 2 boys in combat, and because of that, I've had 2 weddings to make this year. Hamas has a lot to answer for, let me tell you. But the second wedding, my youngest son, the first one was awesome. I have to tell you, my first one, he was already engaged and he was going to get married on like October 22nd or 3rd, and he was called up. He was in he was up north at the time. His fiance was not happy, right? She wanted to be married. And he moved heaven and earth, and he got the army to make them a wedding. And it wasn't even on a base. It was in a field. It was in a field base with a bunch of tanks. It was fantastic. Oh my God, it was wonderful. So the second wedding, right? Second wedding was recently, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And towards the end of it, I looked over at the dancing, the music going on, and I saw what I think is a way out for us, right? A way to a better life, right? It's a way to move beyond where we are right now. Because I saw, Russians who weren't religious. I saw super religious people. I saw everybody in between, and they're all dancing, right? They're all dancing, and they're all laughing, and they're all laughing together, right? That, I think, is the key. It was from stolen simcha that this all started. And I think it's from simcha, but specifically with one another, especially those that are different from us, right? It's is the key to get out of to get us out where we are right now, get us to a better life, a better existence, and we have an incredible opportunity in front of us, right? Which Rosh Hashanah, reality reboots, and it reboots along what we truly desire, right? What we actually really, really want. Much more down to what we think we want, but what we have a primal need for, right? And you can control that. You can direct that. There's a verse in something we say in Tehillim, in Psalms, that we say twice a day. God opens up his hand and give you whatever you have ratzon from, what you really, truly want, right? And I think it's saying that we should want to dance with one another. We should want to have joy with one another. We should want to see the joy in other people, right? And again, different from us, right? God doesn't need you to be judgmental and look down on other people. God's fine. He doesn't need your help. He doesn't need you to be his police. He needs us to love one another. And I know it's a bit of a weedy, hippie message to give, but it happens to be, I think, something that's very important. So, the third question, that is verboten to ask if you're a religious. Verboten is not what do you think. What do you think God thinks about that? Is how do you think God feels about that? Right? Think about it. Think again. If you're religious, if you're not, as a mental exercise. If you believe in God, if you don't, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. Just stop and think for a minute a day. Like, how do you think God feels? Right? Look at the world. Look at this world we're living in. Now, if you're my age, you've seen it just disintegrate and go to rot in the last 10 years. In like 20 years, but at an increasing rate of insanity. It just gets like, what do you think God feels about that? I don't think God's happy about it, right? So look, Here's what I'm going to suggest, and this is the point. This is a message for all Jews, right? Firstly, think to yourself, and again, I don't know if it's true or I don't know if it's not. What would you do, like you personally? What would you do for just the hope that this could be over, for just the hope that our hostages could come home, right? What, Beaver's boys? Nobody's seen them in a year. We don't know if they're alive. What would you do? There's a woman, she's always on the news talking about her husband, Keith. I protest every time I see her. What would you do to end it? What would you do to get our children out of harm's way? What would you do to end Jew hatred forever? And that is the stakes we're playing for, and we can have it. It's right at our fingertips. It's right at our grasp. And the price to get there is so incredibly low. We just got to choose it. Firstly, try not speaking badly about one another, right? Again, if you want to do it in the memory of those 6 that were killed, who like that kid with one hand, who, like, what a brave kid. He threw out a grenade and he lost his hand and was captured, and he still they had them in a tunnel, and the reports were that they fought to survive. They fought to the death when they were murdered. What was it, 2 weeks ago? What would you do in their memory? What would you do so there isn't any more crying mothers or fathers or wives or children? What would you do for just the hope of that? So I'm going to make a suggestion. If you can put it on your radar not to talk badly about each other, or in fact anything. Like we call it Lashon Hara, evil talk, right? Because it's beneath you. It's something that's too lowly for you, right? I put it on your radar. This is something that we shouldn't be doing. In the same way, traditionally, we shouldn't be eating bacon. If you eat bacon, God bless you. God against you. I mean, it's a fair thing you do. Don't get me wrong. But and here's it. If you're religious, I would say there's everybody, every show has 1 or 2 people who do this, right? Or more. Or do it openly, do it publicly. It's not okay. Just say, look, this is not okay. I don't want to hear it, right? Just put it on your radar. Don't make a big deal. And you don't have to be perfect, right? You don't have to be 100% safe. You just got to point yourself in the right direction. And that's it. That's it. And and if you're saying you haven't done this before, say, look, I'll commit. If you're somebody who's not religious, you don't believe in God, say, I will commit on the merest hope. Like, for a week, I won't talk smack. If you can't do a week, do 2 days. If you can't do 2 days, do 1 day. If you can't do 1 day, do a couple of hours. If you can't do 2 hours, do 1 hour. I mean, like an hour when you're awake, obviously. Like, what would you do? That doesn't seem like a high price, right? That doesn't seem like something that's beyond us. Just, again, and say, look, I don't know if this is going to help. I don't know if it's not. But what would you do? And take responsibility and do that, right? And the second thing is, we have to see each other as people, more than people. We have to see each other as souls, right? The symbolism of a soul, a candle flame is a symbol of a flame, is a symbolism of soul, because it always reaches the top, and that is the same that's been in each and every different human being. And then maybe, nasty people in the world, and there are. And maybe bad, but they're all souls with inside, and they may have an ideologically opposed view of reality to you, right? That's fine. That's fine. See them as people and take joy in their joy, and be there for them. See them as your family, right? And it doesn't matter if you have a brother or sister who has a different worldview from you. You still love them. You still love them because it's still your family. See us as one family. And, I think we could change the world. I think we could. And I know it's crazy, right? Just as it's crazy as saying that, talking smack about each other calls October 7th. It's as crazy saying, let's try not doing that. And let's try not doing that. And let's try loving one another, right? Bill and Ted said it the best, I think. Be excellent to each other. And that's it. Be the best you. And again, you don't have to succeed. You just have to try. You just have to put it on your radar to try, right? That's it. That is really just it. So if this message has resonated with you, whoever you are, wherever you may be, could ask you to forward it. I think that would be fantastic. And Shana Tova, Happy New Year, one and all. Let's make it a better one, because I don't know about you, but I think we deserve it. Thank you.